Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are not just talking about hearing.
No.
We are diving deep into the cognitive physics of listening accuracy. And this is a skill that is, profoundly relevant in our world, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This notification-saturated, information-overloaded world we all live in. Whether you're in a critical meeting, trying to learn a new language, or just having a meaningful conversation with someone you care about.
Right.
Your ability to truly understand what's being said is just constantly under assault.
And that's really the core of the problem, isn't it? We live this hyper-connected life where we are just constantly bombarded.
All the time.
Noise, data, pings, pressure. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the function of truly hearing, of accurately processing that whole stream of information, it goes so far beyond just sound waves hitting your eardrum.
Right.
It's a foundational cognitive superpower.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
Because it really is the difference between, just being present in a room and actually being effective. Listening accuracy it's foundational for complex negotiations, for professional success, for empathetic leadership.
For everything.
And most certainly for building deep, trusting personal relationships. You need it everywhere, and yet we treat it so casually.
Well, I think the difficulty is that most people still treat listening as a passive activity.
Yeah, like hitting record on an old cassette player.
Exactly that, just capturing the sound waves. They assume, the process is complete once the signal is received.
But it's not.
But it's not passive at all. It is an incredibly active, dynamic, multi-layered cognitive symphony.
So, yeah.
It's orchestrated by some of the most complex machinery in our brain.
And like any finely tuned, complex system, that means it's extremely vulnerable to disruption.
Very.
So today, our mission is to pull that entire system apart. We're going to dissect the two biggest disruptors, the most powerful forces that influence our listening fidelity.
And we're talking about the internal adversary and the essential ally. The internal adversary is stress, which systematically sabotages our highest level cognitive functions.
And the ally.
And our essential ally is focus.
Yeah.
That's the intentional tool we have to use to cut through all that noise.
And for this deep dive, we want to go beyond just defining these terms. We really want to uncover the specific neurobiological facts, to look under the hood.
Yeah.
We're going to dissect how chronic stress physically compromises the brain's ability to process nuance, explore all the acoustic and linguistic hurdles that make spoken English so incredibly difficult. And then, most importantly, equip you with actionable tools, an arsenal, really, to reclaim your ability to hear and understand the world around you with crystal clarity.
By the time we finish this discussion, you'll realize that improving your listening isn't just about, trying harder.
Yeah.
It's about applying precise cognitive and physiological strategies that are tailored to the challenge.
Okay, so let's unpack this complex machinery. To truly master listening, we have to first understand the journey sound takes.
The whole journey.
From just a simple vibration in the air, all the way to a meaningful idea.
Let's do it.
So let's start with that journey. It's truly amazing how fast and how accurately this whole process takes place.
It's incredible.
Walk us through the initial stages. It begins outside, right? Purely physically, with sound waves.
It is purely mechanical at first, yes. Imagine sound waves as these tiny kinetic vibrations in the air.
Okay.
They're collected by the elaborate folds of your outer ear, the pinna, which acts like a specialized funnel.
Designed to capture the sound.
Exactly, designed to optimize sound capture. These vibrations are then channeled down the ear canal to the eardrum, or the tympanic membrane.
And the eardrum vibrates in response to the pressure of those waves, but that vibration is incredibly tiny, right? It needs to be amplified before the brain can even work with it.
That's right. And that's the genius of the middle ear. The vibrations hit the middle ear, which is home to the three tiniest bones in the human body.
The ossicles.
The malleus, incus, and stapes, collectively called the ossicles. And these bones are arranged like this masterful system of levers. Their job isn't just to transfer the vibration.
It's to make it bigger.
But to massively amplify it. They increase the pressure that's applied to the inner ear by over 20 times with staggering efficiency. It's a critical engineering feat in a tiny, tiny space.
So we have amplified physical vibrations, but the brain doesn't speak in vibrations. It speaks in electricity. So how does the signal make that leap?
That leap happens when the amplified vibration reaches the cochlea.
That spiral-shaped thing.
The gorgeous spiral-shaped structure in the inner ear. Yeah, often compared to a snail shell. This is the crucial point of conversion. It's called signal transduction.
Okay.
Inside the cochlea are thousands of these highly specialized hair cells, or stereocilia. As the fluid inside the cochlea moves because of the vibration, these little hair cells bend.
And when they bend, they fire.
Right, precisely. That mechanical bending triggers an electrochemical reaction. The physical energy of the sound wave is finally converted into a highly organized burst of electrical signals.
So the language of the brain.
The language the brain understands. This raw data is then transmitted immediately via the auditory nerve.
Okay, so we've got an electrical signal now, and it's heading into the brain. Where's the first stop? Where does this immense stream of data get sorted out?
The signal travels immediately to the brainstem.
The brainstem.
You can think of this as the first highly efficient subconscious sorting office.
So it's happening before you're even aware of it.
Oh yeah, it operates lightning fast and does essential work before conscious awareness even kicks in.
So what kind of work is the brainstem doing so quickly?
It's performing crucial subconscious analysis. So basic filtering, some pattern recognition, and especially timing.
Timing.
It determines the minute differences in when a sound hits each ear, which is necessary for sound localization.
So you know where the sound is coming from.
Exactly, knowing where the speaker is in space. It prioritizes the auditory data stream and then sends that refined signal upward.
And the signal then moves up the line, hitting what, the central switchboard?
Yeah.
The thalamus.
Yes, the thalamus. The central hub for almost all sensory information. It's the staging area that decides where this auditory data needs to go for final interpretation. Think of it like air traffic control, directing the information efficiently to its ultimate destination in the cortex.
Which is the primary auditory cortex, mainly housed in the temporal lobe.
That's the spot for basic perception. This is where those raw neural signals are processed into conscious acoustic perceptions: pitch, loudness, and timbre.
Timbre being the quality of the sound.
The quality that lets you distinguish a flute from a violin, even if they're playing the same note. It gives you the whats of the sound, the acoustic facts.
But as we establish, just hearing the whats isn't the same as listening for meaning. So how does the brain bridge that enormous gap? The gap between a recognizable sound and a meaningful idea.
Well, this is where the magic of language comprehension truly begins. The signals don't just stop at the auditory cortex. They spread rapidly into these vast, complex neural networks all across the brain. And a key player here is Wernicke's area.
Wernicke's area.
Which is central for language comprehension and semantics, understanding the meaning of the words themselves. It's your decoding center.
Okay, so for those of us who haven't thought about our temporal lobe since high school biology, can you paint a clearer picture of what the brain is doing here? It's not just recognizing a single word, is it? It has to assemble a whole sentence.
Absolutely. The word recognition happens, but then the information integrates across the frontal and parietal lobes.
Wow.
It's tapping into two colossal resources. First, semantic memory.
Richard.
Your internal encyclopedia, basically. The vast store of facts and concepts that give context to words.
And the second?
The second is episodic memory. The specific context, the history of this relationship, the emotional flavor of past conversations.
So it's pulling in everything.
This whole integration process transforms a series of sounds into a meaningful idea, connecting the new information instantly to everything you already know. And that requires intense coordination.
It sounds like the entire operation needs a highly sophisticated control tower. Something managing the traffic, prioritizing the data, allocating resources.
It does.
And that has to be the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, the command center for accuracy.
Indispensable. The PFC, located right behind your forehead, is the epicenter for all high-level executive functions.
Executive functions.
These are the skills, the management suite, that ensure the fidelity and accuracy of the incoming signal. If the PFC is compromised, all the complex data routing we just talked about is useless.
It just becomes noise.
It becomes fragmented noise.
So let's break down those critical executive functions that rely on a strong PFC. The first one has to be working memory, right? The mental scratch pad.
Yes.
Why is this short-term holding space the bottleneck for complex listening?
Well, working memory is your brain's temporary holding space, often compared to the RAM in a computer.
Okay.
So when someone speaks, you need to hold the first clause of a sentence, say, although the committee initially agreed to the proposal, you hold that in your mind while you wait for the rest.
Which is, they later introduced several non-negotiable amendments.
Right. You have to suspend the meaning of the first part, connect it to the second, and then integrate the whole idea.
You're juggling.
Precisely. You are performing continuous mental juggling. If your working memory capacity is impaired, and we'll definitely discuss how that happens shortly, that sentence just fragments.
You lose the thread.
You literally lose the thread. You forget the subject by the time the speaker reaches the verb, which makes absorbing complex narratives, technical explanations, or multi-step instructions utterly impossible. The information just dissolves.
And this capacity relies heavily on attention control. We need both the ability to select what we listen to and the stamina to keep listening.
Right. We rely on two modes here. First is selective attention.
The cocktail party effect.
The famous cocktail party effect, yeah. The ability to tune into one specific voice in a crowded, noisy room and just suppress all the competing noise. That is the brain actively deciding which input stream gets priority.
And for focused listening, like at a long meeting or a lecture, we rely heavily on sustained attention.
Or vigilance, yeah. That is the stamina. It's maintaining that intentional focus over long periods, resisting mental fatigue and drift. This is a top-down, goal-directed focus managed primarily by the dorsal attention network.
So you're consciously deciding, I need to pay attention.
You consciously decide, my goal is to absorb this presentation, and the dorsal network works to maintain that vigilance, making sure you don't miss the content between the sound bites.
The third function, inhibition, sounds almost counterintuitive, but it is absolutely crucial. We have to actively block things out to hear accurately.
We must. Inhibition is the ability to suppress irrelevant information. This means blocking external noise, the traffic, the phone buzzing, the coffee machine, but far more critically,
The internal stuff.
blocking our own internal chatter. That mental to-do list, the nagging worry about the deadline, the argument you had this morning, self-criticism, that internal noise can be deafening.
Louder than the speaker.
It can completely overwhelm the speaker's voice.
And this suppression relies on highly coordinated structures, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, and the PFC.
Right, the ACC acts as the conflict monitor. It detects when your intended goal, which is listening, conflicts with a dysfunction, like your internal monologue.
And then the PXC steps in.
Once detected, the PFC steps in, and it attempts to dampen that distraction using inhibitory neurotransmitters. If that system is tired or overloaded or damaged, which, spoiler alert, stress will accomplish, the internal noise wins.
And you just can't isolate the signal anymore.
I can't.
Finally, we need cognitive flexibility. Why does the ability to shift perspective matter so much for listening accuracy?
Because conversations are dynamic. They're not static transcripts. New information constantly changes the context. Someone might change their tone or introduce a contradictory fact or pivot their argument.
And you have to pivot with them.
A skilled listener must be able to shift perspective instantly, reevaluating their initial interpretation as new data arrives.
So if you hear a tone you perceive as criticism and you immediately shut down, you are demonstrating a lack of flexibility.
Exactly. You get rigidly stuck on that first, often defensive impression. You miss all the subsequent mitigating factors, the nuances, the real meaning that unfolds later. Cognitive flexibility allows for continuous updating of your understanding.
So you don't get locked into a fixed and potentially wrong interpretation of what the speaker meant.
Precisely.
So that is the machine, perfectly coordinated, running at incredible speed, relying entirely on the pristine function of the PFC and its executive functions.
It's a finely tuned marvel. But now we have to talk about the primary systemic failure agent.
The wrench in the works.
The most common wrench thrown into this entire orchestra.
And that wrench is stress. Biologically, stress is the body's response, the fight or flight mechanism to perceived demands or threats.
Yeah.
It's an ancient mechanism.
An ancient survival system, yeah. Designed for escaping a saber-toothed cat. Not for understanding the subtle difference between, I think we should delay and I'm open to delaying if.
Two very different things.
Very different. And we have to distinguish between the two types of stress.
Okay, so we have acute stress, which is the short burst, right? The adrenaline rush right before you stand up to speak or right as a deadline hits.
That acute, short-term stress can actually temporarily sharpen your focus. It mobilizes resources and makes you hyper-alert. But the real enemy, the silent saboteur of sustained listening accuracy, is chronic stress.
The long-term stuff.
The prolonged, persistent state caused by unending pressure, financial worries, difficult job dynamics, family strain. That is the persistent erosion agent.
And the reason chronic stress is so damaging is that it moves beyond just altering our mood. It starts to compromise the physical structure of the brain's control center. How does that happen on a hormonal level?
The main culprit is the sustained excessive release of cortisol, the primary stress hormone.
Right.
Cortisol is vital in moderation, but when levels stay high for weeks or months, it becomes neurotoxic.
Neurotoxic. You mean literally poisonous to the brain cells?
Precisely. High sustained levels of cortisol cause the dendrites, the branching connections between neurons, to prune back, reducing the pathways available for communication.
Wow.
And crucially, it can also lead to the physical shrinkage of the volume of the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus.
Wait, the PFC, our control tower for all executive function, and the hippocampus, the critical center for memory, they can physically shrink.
They can. Analogy I like is it's like running your computer processor constantly at maximum voltage without proper cooling.
The components degrade.
The components don't just slow down, they start to physically degrade, limiting your highest level cognitive capacity. If your control tower is physically degrading, you lose the ability to think clearly, maintain focus, and encode information accurately.
So stress isn't just a feeling.
It's an active physical attack on your ability to process complexity.
That's terrifying. And what about adrenaline and noradrenaline? We associate those with speed and alertness.
Continuous release of those hormones, it keeps your body perpetually on high alert. Your heart rate is up, muscles are primed for action, sensory awareness is heightened, you're ready to fight or flee.
Okay.
The problem is that this process diverts the body's energy and resources to basic survival functions, pulling energy away from the subtle, higher-level cognitive processing needed for accurate listening.
So you're running on an emergency power setting that prioritizes basic survival over careful comprehension.
Exactly.
The capacity for nuance is just gone.
Entirely. Now let's look at the cognitive costs, the sabotage in action. The first casualty, as you mentioned, is reduced working memory capacity.
Right. When the PFC is saturated with cortisol and physically compromised, it struggles to maintain that mental scratch pad. Complex instructions just fragment instantly.
Yeah.
You might remember the final item of a 5-step instruction, but the first 4 are already gone.
You fall into this cognitive loop of constantly needing to ask for information to be repeated, or worse, you just nod along, mistakenly believing you understood when you only caught pieces.
Yeah.
And this inability to hold the thread is compounded by the second cognitive cost, narrow attention or cognitive tunnel vision.
This is a classic survival mechanism, just horribly misused in conversation.
It is. The brain, operating in emergency mode, focuses intensely, almost obsessively, on the perceived threat or the most salient, often negative, part of what's being said.
So give us an example.
Say you're getting feedback and the speaker mentions a slight risk or a small problem. The stressed brain immediately locks on to risk or problem.
And filters out everything else.
It filters out all the mitigating language, the slight, the small, the context, the solution offered. The brain actively edits the message to confirm its underlying fear or threat.
It's not hearing reality, it's hearing a confirmation of its own anxiety.
That's it.
That explains why stressed people often feel attacked even when communication is neutral or even positive. Their tunnel vision has filtered out all the good stuff.
And this feeds right into the third cost, loss of flexibility and increased rigidity.
The ability to shift perspective we talked about.
Chronic stress dismantles it. That quick reevaluation, it disappears. You get stuck in these fixed, typically defensive patterns of interpretation.
And decision-making gets harder.
Exponentially harder, because you can't easily analyze variables or contradictory information objectively.
So you become locked into your initial interpretation. If you decide the speaker is hostile in the first 30 seconds, you will process every single subsequent word through that filter, no matter what they actually say.
Exactly. And the fourth cognitive cost is almost cruelly paradoxical: increased distractibility.
This is strange. If stress is making us focus on a threat, shouldn't it make us less distractible?
Logically, you'd think so, but mechanically, no. Stress breaks down the filtering mechanism. The ACC and PFC struggle to inhibit irrelevant signals.
So everything seems louder.
External noises, a colleague clicking a pen, traffic outside, seem exponentially louder, more intrusive.
But the internal noise is the killer.
That's the one. The worry loops, the anxieties, planning your response, self-doubt, they get amplified. The stressed brain can't shut them down. It's a constant, loud internal monologue that consumes all your cognitive resources.
Which prevents you from ever truly focusing on the voice in front of you.
And this culminates in perhaps the most damaging conversational effect: emotional biases and misinterpretation.
So when you are hypervigilant, your baseline is defensive.
You are far more likely to assign negative intentions to neutral or ambiguous communication. A slight pause is interpreted as disapproval. A neutral tone is heard as criticism. Hesitation is read as deception.
So listening shifts entirely from understanding to self-defense.
Exactly. The goal is no longer comprehension, it is anticipatory counterargument.
And in that state, friction and conflict would become inevitable. The stress is literally manufactured misunderstanding.
A stressed listener is a poor listener, and a poor listener systematically creates conflict. That is the neurobiological definition of communication breakdown.
Okay, so that's the internal saboteur. Now, let's acknowledge the challenges waiting for us outside, the external hurdles that compromise listening, even when our PFC is fully functional.
Right.
The source material talks about the fundamental reality of spoken English. It is not like written English, where words are neatly separated by spaces.
No, it's a continuous stream, an acoustic soup.
The listener's job is not passive reception, then.
It's active segmentation. Your brain has to instantly figure out where one word ends and the next begins. And this is an incredibly challenging task, largely due to connected speech.
The acoustic gymnastics of native, fast talking.
That's it.
Let's start with elision, where sounds simply disappear.
Elision means that sounds are routinely dropped or deleted between words for efficiency, especially T and dude sounds, or sometimes entire syllables.
Like next door becomes next door.
Right, the T is gone,
Yep.
or fax becomes fax.
Can you give us a few more examples where this might confuse a listener who is expecting, textbook pronunciation?
Certainly. Think about common adverbial phrases. Exactly is frequently reduced to exactly in casual speech. Or, when you combine last night, that final T, it often just disappears, making it sound like last night.
So if you're not trained for it, you just miss it.
When words that end in a T or D are followed by a consonant, that sound is often neutralized or dropped entirely. Listeners struggle to segment the words if they're listening for a sound that isn't there.
Okay, the next hurdle is assimilation. This is where a sound changes to become more like its neighbor.
Assimilation is the brain prioritizing smooth, efficient transition over perfect articulation. A sound physically morphs into something else.
Okay.
Say 10 bags quickly.
10 bags.
The N sound changes to AM sound 10 bags because the next sound B is made with the lips. Your mouth is already preparing for the next sound.
So the sound changes its entire place of articulation. What are some other key examples?
The most common ones involve the transition between D or T and Y. Did you almost always becomes did you or did you? It creates a new sound that isn't written anywhere in the spelling, but it's standard pronunciation. If a listener is rigidly listening for the separate D sound, they'll miss the whole word. Another one is handbag. In fast speech, it often sounds like handbag.
And finally, liaison or linking. This is how we join sounds across word boundaries.
This is the essence of that acoustic soup. A consonant ending will join seamlessly with a following vowel start. Think of the phrase pick it up.
Pick it up.
A native speaker pronounces it like 3 syllables joined together. Pick it up. If the brain expects 3 distinct, separated words, it misses the segmentation cues entirely.
It's the constant blending. An apple becomes an apple, 4 hours becomes 4 hours.
Exactly. Your brain has to instantaneously recognize that the final consonant of the first word belongs acoustically with the beginning of the second word to parse the structure correctly. This blending drastically increases the processing load.
And the segmentation challenge is compounded by the core rhythm of the language. English is a stress-timed language.
This is fundamental. English doesn't give equal time to every syllable. We stress the important content words.
Nouns, main verbs, adjectives.
Right. And we almost swallow the less important function words, articles, prepositions, auxiliary verbs. The timing of the sentence is determined by when those stressed syllables occur.
And those rush-through function words, the grammatical glue, are often subjected to reductions and weak forms.
They're reduced to the schwa sound, which is, phonetically, the lazy central vowel, the most common sound in English.
So tuvens is almost never pronounced fully.
The word to is rarely pronounced with the full vowel sound. I want to go becomes I want to go. A cup of tea becomes a cup of tea.
So if a learner, or even a fatigued listener, is expecting the full, clear pronunciation of to or of or are, they miss those quick, reduced forms.
And since those words are structurally vital, their absence disrupts the understanding of the entire sentence. It creates syntactic chaos.
You catch the main words, but not how they connect.
A listener might catch the content words want, go, cup, tea, but miss the grammatical relationship because the connecting words were too quick, too reduced, or too quiet.
And the role of stress placement itself can change the meaning of the word or the intent of the sentence.
Stress is a crucial prosodic cue. Think about the word present. Stress on the first syllable, present, means a gift.
And on the second, present means to give.
Exactly. The listener has to instantly decode the meaning based solely on that stress placement, and shifting the stress in a sentence changes everything.
Like, I never said she stole the money versus I never said she stole the money.
Two completely different implications. Misinterpreting intended sentence stress means you misunderstand the speaker's main point entirely.
And finally, we have the external factors that just add more noise to the system. Unfamiliar accents and minimal pairs.
Accents and dialects introduce unfamiliar vowel or consonant sounds that make even known words sound alien. This forces the brain to spend extra time trying to map the sound onto a known word.
And that pause is enough to make you fall behind.
It is. And minimal pairs words that differ by only one sound, like ship versus sheep, pin versus pen, cause momentary acoustic confusion. The listener has to hold both possibilities in working memory until the context clarifies which word was intended, further taxing those limited resources.
So we've successfully navigated the acoustic soup. The words are segmented, they're identified, but now we hit the cognitive and structural bottlenecks. We're moving beyond the sounds and into the mental dictionary and the rules of the language.
The first and most familiar challenge is unfamiliar vocabulary. If you encounter an unknown word, it's an immediate roadblock. Your brain just slams the brakes.
And while the brain is guessing, the speaker is relentlessly moving forward.
Exactly. The listener falls behind instantly, leading to missed words in the subsequent seconds, creating a continuous backlog.
And this effect is magnified by the ambiguity tax, the fact that English is just riddled with words that have multiple meanings.
Autolysemy, yeah. So the brain doesn't just activate one meaning, it activates multiple candidates simultaneously. When you hear the word bank, the brain activates the financial institution, the side of the river, maybe even the action of storing.
And it has to hold all of those until the context clarifies.
It must hold all these candidates in working memory. This holding pattern, this ambiguity tax, consumes precious cognitive resources.
And non-literal language is notoriously taxing. Idioms, slang, phrasal verbs like kick the bucket or look up to someone.
The meaning is not the sum of its parts. If the specific phrase hasn't been learned as a single semantic unit, the brain tries to process the words individually and it just results in nonsense.
Phrasal verbs must be especially hard.
They are, because the particle up, down, off radically changes the verb's meaning. Look versus look up versus look up to. If the specific chunk hasn't been memorized, it acts just like an unknown word.
And we can't talk about speed without mentioning retrieval speed.
Native speech is fast, often 120 to 150 words per minute. If a listener's lexical retrieval, the speed at which they can pull the word and its meaning from their mental dictionary, is too slow, they just lag the speaker.
A constant backlog.
This underscores the need for vocabulary to be active and rapidly accessible, not just something you passively recognize on a page. If your brain takes 50 milliseconds longer to retrieve a word than the speaker's delivery time, you are perpetually playing catch-up.
Now for the structure. Even if we catch every word, the complexity of the grammar itself can create huge bottlenecks. Let's talk about complex sentence structures.
These are sentences that are syntactically dense. Long sentences, often with multiple embedded clauses, where important details are stuck between the subject and the main verb.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The manager, who is dealing with a massive backlog due to the system outage that occurred last week, announced the new deadline.
So the brain has to suspend the initial idea, the manager, while processing that whole long clause. That is a massive working memory tax.
It requires extreme juggling. If the sentence is too long or the listener is distracted, that information in the suspension zone gets pushed out of working memory and you lose the connection.
And structural deviations also create these cognitive bumps.
Yes, passive voice. The decision was made by the committee, and inversions, never have I seen. They flip the expected subject-verb-object order.
And because English relies so heavily on that expected order, when it's flipped, the brain has to pause and reparse the meaning to figure out who did what to whom.
It forces the listener to be flexible, but it also slows processing. Then there is implicit grammar, or ellipsis,
where native speakers just leave out words.
Constantly, because the context is obvious. Who wants coffee? I do.
Meaning, I do want coffee.
Right, or have you seen John? I have. Learners, expecting the full grammatical structure, perceive this omission as a missing piece of information.
And the absence of punctuation in speech, We rely entirely on prosody rhythm, pauses, intonation to signal the structural breaks.
This is huge. In writing, commas and periods give us clause boundaries. In speech, a speaker's subtle pause, a slight rise in pitch, or a shift in rhythm signals to the listener, new idea coming, or end of the clause.
And if you miss that cue,
If a listener misinterprets those subtle auditory cues, maybe they don't notice the pause, they might incorrectly link two separate ideas or fail to distinguish between the main point and a secondary detail.
so this brings us to the hard limits of the machine. The first ultimate bottleneck, working memory limits or RAM overload.
We simply do not have unlimited capacity. Relentlessly fast, structurally complex, or highly unfamiliar speech overloads this space instantly.
And information gets pushed out.
It gets pushed out before it can be fully encoded into long-term memory. The listener is left with a fragmented, distorted, incomplete message.
And the second is the time crunch. Processing speed lag.
Every single stage we've discussed, acoustic conversion, signal routing, lexical retrieval, syntactic parsing, it all takes milliseconds. If the listener's overall processing speed is even slightly slower than the speaker's delivery rate,
You're in trouble.
you are. Say the speaker is at 140 words per minute and the listener processes at 110. Words are missed simply due to lack of time to engage fully. It's like watching a video that is constantly buffering, stuck 30 seconds behind the action.
And the final bottleneck is arguably the most crippling for non-native processing, the translation habit.
This is a multi-step, indirect route. The listener hears English, translates it to their native language, processes the meaning in their native language, formulates response, and then translates the response back to English.
It sounds exhausting.
It is incredibly slow and exponentially taxing on working memory. The listener is perpetually stuck processing the past, deaf to current words, because all cognitive resources are tied up translating what was just said. Breaking this habit is the absolute key to real-time comprehension.
Okay, that whirlwind tour showed us everything that can go wrong. But the hopeful side is immense. Attention regulation and stress management are highly trainable skills. The brain is plastic, it can change.
Absolutely. Focus can buffer stress. Let's look at the arsenal of solutions we can immediately deploy to improve our accuracy.
Since chronic stress is a direct attack on the physical structure of the PFC, our first set of solutions must be neuroprotective. We need to strengthen that control tower.
Right. And mindfulness and meditation are core attention training exercises.
So how does sitting still and focusing on the breath physically help me listen better in a chaotic meeting?
It physically strengthens the pathways of the dorsal attention network. Mindfulness teaches you metacognition, the skill of noticing internal chatter, that anxiety and self-doubt, without getting swept away by it.
So you see it, but you don't engage with it.
You learn to observe those internal distractors, acknowledging they are present, and then gently redirecting your focus back to the speaker. This reduces the power of that internal saboteur to hijack your attention. Studies even show increased gray matter density in the PFC of regular meditators.
Wow, that's a huge return on investment. And for an in-the-moment fix, when you feel that fight-or-flight response spiking, there's the physiological reset.
Yes. Deep, slow, diaphragmatic breathing techniques like box breathing sends an immediate, powerful signal to the nervous system.
Okay.
This activates the parasympathetic rest and digest system, counteracting the stress response and downregulating the physical symptoms.
Your heart rate comes down.
Reduced heart rate, decreased adrenaline. If you can physically calm your body, you immediately restore a small amount of capacity to the PFC, pulling you back from that emergency power setting.
And underpinning all of this is the fundamental stuff. Basic physio care, particularly sleep hygiene.
Sleep is not optional. It is fundamental brain maintenance. The PFC especially requires 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep to restore cognitive balance.
And if you don't get it,
During sleep, your brain literally clears out metabolic byproducts that accumulate during the day. If you are chronically sleep deprived, your PFC starts the day in a compromised state, making executive functions like attention and working memory susceptible to overload even by mild stress.
and finally, a key reframing tool, understanding the Yerkes-Dodson law.
This is about managing arousal, not eliminating it. We know the relationship between arousal and performance is a bell curve. Too little arousal, so boredom, means poor performance. Too much arousal, overwhelming stress, means performance collapses. The goal is to stay in the middle optimal arousal, where you are alert, energized, and focused, but fundamentally calm.
So you relabel the feeling.
Relabeling feelings of anxiety, those butterflies, as readiness or energy allows you to constructively channel that adrenaline into focus rather than letting it spiral into panic.
Now, we sharpen the focus spotlight itself. We need practices that force the brain out of passive reception and into active processing.
Exactly.
Active listening through paraphrasing and summarizing is essential.
It is. When you repeat the main points back to the speaker in your own words. So what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z, is that right? You achieve 3 critical things.
Okay.
1, you confirm accuracy with the speaker. 2, you force your brain to actively synthesize and structure the information, integrating it into coherent ideas rather than fragmented words.
And 3.
3, this synthesis encodes the information into memory much more robustly than passive listening ever could.
To combat the modern plague of divided attention, the solution is simple but hard. Single tasking.
Actively eliminate distractions. Turn off notifications, put the phone away, close the laptop lid during critical conversations. Attentional switching, even for a millisecond, carries a cognitive cost.
So it's not politeness, it's efficiency.
It is cognitive efficiency. Preventing that attentional drain allows the dorsal network to fully lock on and allocate all available RAM to the speaker.
We often overlook how much preparation reduces cognitive load. Pre-preparation is hugely effective.
Yeah, review the agenda, read background material, or even just briefly consider the topic beforehand. This creates a mental framework, a set of pre-existing slots for new information to fit into.
So the brain doesn't have to build from scratch.
It just plugs the data into the existing framework. This significantly lowers the cognitive load.
And if the conversation is dense and you have to take notes, we need strategic note-taking.
Avoid the transcription trap. Trying to write down everything the speaker says is impossible and actively pulls your attention away from real-time comprehension.
So what should you do?
Instead, focus on capturing keywords, main ideas, decisions, and the high-level structure of the argument. Leave wide margins for your own synthesis and questions. This allows your focus to remain primarily on listening and processing.
Okay, now we confront the acoustic soup. We need to train the ear to recognize the reality of connected speech. First up, shadowing.
Shadowing is a powerful neurological hack. You listen to native audio, say a short news clip or a segment of dialogue, and immediately repeat what you hear, mimicking the rhythm, intonation, and flow.
So it's training your mouth and your ear at the same time.
It builds physical and auditory intuition for how sounds blend together, forcing your articulatory organs to naturally produce those reductions, assimilations, and links we discussed.
And for focused attention on those drop sounds, we have transcribing short segments.
Right. Write down every sound you hear in 30 to 60 seconds of native audio. This forces hyperattention to weak forms, drop T's, and elided sounds, confronting the reality of connected speech directly.
It sounds frustrating.
It's frustrating initially, but it's the best way to train your ear to actively segment those quick, reduced sounds that typically vanish in real time.
To combat the retrieval speed lag, we need to focus on lexical strength.
Prioritize high-frequency vocabulary, but critically learn words in context as chunks or collocations.
Not just individual words.
Instead of learning heavy and rain separately, learn the chunk heavy rain. Instead of make and decision, learn make a decision. Retrieval of a fixed chunk is neurologically much faster than assembling individual words on the fly.
And to conquer the grammar gauntlet, we must analyze sentence structure.
Consciously analyze transcripts to identify where native speakers use embedded clauses, how they handle structural deviations like the passive voice, and most importantly, how they use prosody pauses and intonation to signal structural breaks.
So you know what to listen for.
If you know where to listen for the structural cues, you are less likely to get lost in a long sentence.
And finally, to break the ultimate bottleneck of the translation habit, we must think in English.
Consciously practice narrating your life, formulating opinions, and reasoning directly in English. This is extremely taxing at first, but it is the necessary pathway to bypass that slow, multi-step translation detour.
The goal is a direct connection.
Hearing English, processing meaning in English, and responding in English, freeing up crucial cognitive space for real-time processing.
Our final set of tools addresses the psychological component, mental resilience, and emotional intelligence. Let's start with a shift in mindset. Embrace imperfection.
Right. Recognize that missing a word or a phrase is inevitable. It's feedback, not failure. The critical skill is flow control.
Don't rewind.
When a word is missed, resist that powerful urge to mentally rewind and try to guess what it was. If you mentally rewind, you miss the next 15 seconds of the conversation.
So what do you do?
Instead, focus on inferring the main meaning from the context of the words you did catch and keep the flow going.
We should be proactive in engagement, not passive, even when we're feeling confused.
Use active listening techniques to politely ask for clarification or paraphrase specific phrases to ensure accuracy. If you catch yourself getting defensive, use a non-judgmental phrase like, "Just to ensure I fully grasp that point, could you rephrase what you said about the implementation timeline?"
That proactive management of accuracy.
It is.
And finally, the overarching framework. Emotional intelligence, EI. This helps us neutralize the stress-induced biases we talked about earlier.
EI is the master skill here. It truly is. It starts with self-awareness.
Knowing your own state.
Recognize your own internal state. Are you stressed? Are you tired? Are you reacting defensively because the speaker used a triggering word?
Yeah.
You have to know your own emotional filters.
And then comes self-regulation.
Manage impulses. The impulse to interrupt, the impulse to jump in, the impulse to react defensively. Holding back that immediate reaction creates the objective mental space needed for true, impartial listening.
And the most powerful component of EI in conversation is empathy.
Empathy is active effort. It means seeking the other person's perspective, their feelings, their unspoken needs, integrating nonverbal cues along with the words.
And that counteracts the negative bias.
It helps counteract the stress-induced negative biases that make us assume hostile intent. By focusing on the speaker's true internal state, you shift the listening goal from self-defense back to understanding.
Which guarantees a far more complete and compassionate comprehension of the whole message.
Exactly.
We have journeyed through an incredibly intricate neural dance, from a physical vibration in the air, all the way to a complex idea in the prefrontal cortex. We've seen how chronic stress systematically impairs our highest executive functions,
Shrinking memory, narrowing attention.
confirming its role as the cognitive saboteur.
And conversely, we've seen how intentional focus, our essential trainable ally, is the required tool to amplify comprehension, segment the acoustic chaos, and find meaning within the structural complexity of language.
The mastery comes down to managing that dynamic tension.
Between the cognitive saboteur and our intentional focus.
It's clear now that conscious, focused listening is far from a passive skill. It's a profound act of respect and a critical building block for connection, trust, and success.
In every part of life.
Whether it's high-stakes situations like emergency services, subtle communication in leadership, or deep, intimate conversations, the quality of your output is entirely dependent on the fidelity of your input.
We encourage you to start applying these strategies today, to practice shadowing, to implement strategic breathing, and to prioritize single tasking in your next important conversation. Start strengthening those PFC pathways now.
And we'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. In a world that constantly rewards speaking, broadcasting, and being loud, consider this. How much of what you think you know about the people closest to you, your colleagues, your partner, your friends, is actually based on what you project onto them, or what you wish they meant, versus what you truly, accurately heard and comprehended from them? The tireless pursuit of genuine accuracy defines the quality of our connections.